Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
And I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Indeed you are, people. Listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast and welcome back to another short, quick one episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I was umming and ahhing whether to do this one. Obviously, the news has just broken in the last hour or so that Gudakesh Motie is out of the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe, and Johnson Charles has been chosen as his replacement. Consequently, I felt that I had to record a little quick one just looking at that decision, because obviously the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of people will be, how can we replace a left-arm spinner with a opening batter? That will be the kind of immediate hot take. Well, it's not really a hot take. The immediate take given the announcement from Cricket West Indies. And I figured, I was like, I want to actually go to bed. But I was like, I can't be bothered to write some kind of massive thread about it. So let me just quickly record this one to get it out of the way. I should introduce myself, by the way. My name is Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. If you're new to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, of course, follow us on all of our socials at Carib Cricket on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, subscribe if you're listening on YouTube to this particular video. Thank you to all those who have been subscribing over the last few videos. Loads of you have pressed that subscribe button over the last week and a bit or so. So keep on smashing it, keep on sharing it, keep on liking the video, etc. So let's get into it. Johnson Charles, let me read the official statement, because remember, it's always about context first. Rather than gut reaction, you have to read the context of the announcement from Cricket West Indies. Whether you agree with it or not, this is what they said. Cricket West Indies senior men's selection panel today announced that Johnson Charles has been named as the replacement for Gudakesh Motie in the 15-member squad for the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup qualifier tournament to be played in Zimbabwe starting on Sunday, the 18th of June, 10 days from now. Left-arm spinner Motie has not recovered from a lower back injury. Charles recently made a return to the West Indies ODI team for the ongoing 3-match ODI series against UAE in Sharjah. He scored 63 in the second match, which was his 50th ODI appearance, and was named player of the match. Lead selector, the most honourable Dr. Desmond Haynes, said, "We want to wish Motie the best as he continues his rehabilitation. He is one of the players who we expect to feature in West Indies cricket going forward, so we want to see him recover fully so he can participate when called upon." Haynes added, "When we discussed the replacement player, we looked at the possibility of another spinner in the squad. However, we felt it was better to go with Charles. He is experienced at the international level. He will add value to the team for what will be a very important tournament. He also has knowledge of the Zimbabwe conditions, having previously played ODI matches there, so we see him as the right man for the job at this stage." So the rationale was given, and I'll kind of get to that in a second and kind of pour over the kind of statement from lead selector Haynes in a second. But it's worth pointing out with regards to Motie, for those who don't remember what happened with Gudakesh Motie. Gudakesh Motie was selected for that West Indies A tour of Bangladesh. He played in the first game, and then it was announced after the first game that he was dealing with a lower back injury. They replaced Motie with, who did they replace him with? Oh, Permol. Permol was flown out to Bangladesh to replace Motie, and they said that they would fly Motie to UAE to continue his rehabilitation, with the idea of having him ready for Zimbabwe by the time the World Cup qualifiers continued. So it was kind of like a precaution move to fly him out and just miss out the rest of that on a 3-match unofficial test series versus Bangladesh A. Evidently, he's not recovered. It's also worth reminding people that when Motie, if people may or may not remember, that Motie was injured for, let me just remind myself, Motie was injured. Was it for bear with me, people, just have to get my dates right. Yeah, people might remember that Motie was injured in South Africa as well. And I think he missed the first test in South Africa. I think he picked up an injury in the warm-up game in South Africa, missed the first test. Whether he would have played or not in terms of selection, he missed the first test. came back for the second, and they said at the time that Motie was battling a few injury problems. So obviously those injury woes have not gone away. That notwithstanding, West Indies then had a selection or a dilemma to solve. Now, here's my first thing, because I've written, as usual, I've kind of written down a set of notes, and I'm not actually going to go in the order that I thought I was going to go in. I'm going to start with Motie first, in so much as, is it a miss? In one sense, it's a huge blow, because ultimately the last time Gudakesh Motie was in Zimbabwe, which was earlier this year, when we played that 2-match test series in February, Gudakesh Motie took 19 wickets in the series and was named player of the series against Zimbabwe, effectively bowling us to victory in the second test match, right? So somebody who has that level of performance only 4 months ago in the country where the World Cup qualifiers are going to be, yes, it's a huge blow. However, context, people. Was Gudakesh Motie going to get into our starting 11 in the course of the World Cup? Yes, he may have played a few games here and there, but I personally never had Motie in my starting 11 for the World Cup qualifiers. And before people come to me and say, what type of foolishness and rubbish am I talking? Think about it. Look at the World Cup squad. Let me name it for those who don't remember. Sorry, people, I still got that cold. The World Cup squad was as follows: Shea Holt, Rovman Powell, Shamar Brooks, Yannick Correa, Casey Carty, Roston Chase, Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Alzari Joseph, Brandon King, Carl Mayers, Gudakesh Motie, Kemo Paul, Nicholas Puran, Romario Shepherd. Now, people may remember a couple of videos ago, I said, well, what's our starting attack in the World Cup? And I had it down as definitely 2 seamers, but I suspect when it comes to spin, Gudakesh Motie is not, with all due respect to Gudakesh Motie, Akil Hussain is the go-to left-arm spinner in the West Indies white ball sides. So Motie was never going to be playing instead of Akil Hussain. If he got a game, it was in addition to Akil Hussain. But when you think about balance of the side, were we really going to pick Akil Hussain and Gudakesh Motie in a starting 11 in the World Cup for the majority of the games? Me personally, no, that was never going to happen. It was going to be Motie. Sorry, it was going to be Hussain, Correa, and Roston Chase. That's who I felt, if we were going to have spin, that was the likely spin cadre that would play in a World Cup qualifier match, with the rest of the bowling positions going to like Alzari Joseph, Jason Holder, and one other in terms of seam. Now, obviously, there's a question mark there with Correa. Correa may well not play, and another seamer is picked, but certainly Roston Chase is probably guaranteed of playing, and Akil Hussain was always guaranteed of playing. So in that context, losing Motie is a big blow, but there was no way. I gave Motie like a 15% chance of starting games. He would only play if they looked at a track in Zimbabwe and was like, boy, this is a ranked turner from ball 1. Let's get as many spinners in as possible. And then you're playing Gudakesh Motie. But if it's, well, we're going in with 2 spinners, you're not playing Motie and Akil Hussain. You're just not. Or that's my personal view anyway. So that's the context of understanding Motie's absence. So naturally, people then said, well, if Motie's out, a spinner has to replace him. But who, people? Who? And be realistic here. Because everyone naturally will go, well, Kevin Sinclair should have got in the squad. And obviously, Kevin Sinclair is the man in form. Probably one of the better, I haven't even done the video on that yet, but probably one of the top 2 performers in the West Indies unofficial test series versus Bangladesh A. West Indies A, I should say. Obviously performed really well in the first class season for Guyana Harper Eagles. And Kevin Sinclair is honour, and obviously played well as well in the Headley Week series at the end of the West Indies Championship. So Kevin Sinclair is in a fine run of form with his cricket, both red ball primarily, but you'd feel like he could translate that over to white ball. So naturally, people have said, well, Kevin Sinclair should replace Gudakesh Motie, spinner for spinner. But again, you have to be realistic. Even if Kevin Sinclair replaced Gudakesh Motie, would Kevin Sinclair get in the West Indies ODI side at this stage? Would he get in the side ahead of Roston Chase? I'm not asking you if you want him to. I'm asking you, would he? And the answer is no. The answer is no. Be realistic, people. Because when you lot are saying call Kevin Sinclair, you're saying call Kevin Sinclair like Kevin Sinclair's getting into the team. All Kevin Sinclair would be doing would be there to be an injury backup during the course of the World Cup qualifiers. Roston Chase is the incumbent. Never mind if he should be the incumbent, which he probably shouldn't. He is the incumbent. And all the while Roston Chase has that kind of privilege of being in the incumbent and being Thanos, there's no way Kevin Sinclair, who does the same role as Roston Chase in terms of an off spinner who can bat, Kevin Sinclair's not, he's not leapfrogging Roston Chase at this stage. He may in the near future, but not at this stage. So when people are saying, Sinclair should have replaced Motie, replaced him to do what? Ride the bench. Clearly to ride the bench. And some of you may say, no, that's fine, Mash, but because we know he was going to ride the bench, but we just want the spinning optional backup to also ride the bench in the same way how Motie was going to ride the bench. But I suspect that most of you who are calling Sinclair are taking the attitude that Sinclair then gets into the team. Not happening. That said, on the surface of it, a spinner should probably have replaced Gudakesh Motie. But then you also have to look at this you have to look at this context. For all the good form that Kevin Sinclair has had, how much of that has been in white ball cricket? Yes, he's been good in the West Indies domestic championship. Yes, he was good in Headley versus Weeks. Yes, he was good in the unofficial West Indies A series versus Bangladesh A. But all of that is red ball cricket. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that doesn't mean he can't be good in white ball cricket. But he's not played the first two games versus UAE. So what's the white ball sample size that they would be using to say, right, Kevin Sinclair, you come in instead of Gudakesh Motie? All they could go on is, you're in form right now, you come in. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have Kevin Sinclair, just set in the context. So then you go to the choice that they did make, Johnson Charles. Why Johnson Charles? I've ummed and ahed about it, I've thought about it, and this is the only reason I can come up with. Johnson Charles right now is probably in the form of his life. And we can say going all the way back to CPL 2022, which was what? So late August, September through to now, Johnson Charles has been on a fine run of form. It's led to him picking up T20 bags here and there. He did well in the most recent T20 bag he picked up was in the Bangladesh one. I think his team actually won the final. Let me just go and remind myself. I swear they won the final. Yes, they won. And in fact, Johnson Charles was the player of the match in the final, if I remember rightly. He played for Camilla Victorians. So Johnson Charles has been getting his T20 bags and doing well. He then got recalled to the West Indies. So recalled, he was already in it from the World Cup. He played for the West Indies in South Africa. Obviously, he scored that 118 in South Africa in that second T20 international. He then got the call up to the West Indies ODI side in UAE to replace Devon Thomas after Devon Thomas caught that case. And of course, game one, he scored 24. Let me remind myself, he scored 24 of 19 balls. And then obviously game two a few days ago, he scored 63 of 40 odd balls. So in some ways, it's a bit of a no-brainer that they've gone to Johnson Charles because they've looked at kind of their options and basically gone for the who's in form when it comes to white ball cricket. And the most informed player is probably Johnson Charles, albeit 2020 cricket, although based on the small sample size of UAE, they would argue that he's translated that 2020 form into ODI cricket. And they probably want to ride the crest of the wave that is the form that Johnson Charles is in. Obviously, though, opening batter does not equal backup spinner. So it begs the question, as much as I can give you a rationale for why they've turned to Charles, Charles is there to ride the bench as well. So why have they picked him? What is it that they are hoping or worried about that has led to Charles's pick? I can only see form as the rationale. Should someone get injured, would Charles play? I mean, if an opener got injured, and this is why I've got an issue. If King or Mayer's got injured, would Charles then be the replacement and would Hope then stay at 4? Or if one of those two openers, King or Mayer's got injured, would Hope go back to open? And if the answer is the latter, that Hope would go back to open, which I'm assuming wouldn't happen, why have they picked Charles? So I have to hope and assume that the rationale for picking Charles is he's the guy in form. He's got the white ball credentials in recent times. He will provide decent batting backup to fill a variety of different spaces in the batting lineup should an injury happen, because he's a dynamic batter, more dynamic than the other backup batters in the 15-man squad. So if you look at the 15-man squad at current for the World Cup, if there was an injury to the likely starting lineup in the World Cup, the replacement would be Casey Carty. So effectively what I think they've done is they've said to themselves, well, boy, Johnson Charles is far more dynamic than Casey Carty. Let's bring him. And then we've got the luxury of a backup batter who can bat explosively to come into the side. I'm not saying I agree, people. I'm trying to give a rationale. And I don't know if that rationale actually even makes any sense. I'm just trying to find one. But the person who wins the most out of Johnson Charles getting the call up to replace Gudakesh Motie is actually Roston Chase. And let me explain why. Now that Charles has replaced Motie and they haven't brought a spinner in to replace Motie, Chase 100, 1000% has to play in every match. I hope some of you already understand why without me needing to spell it out, but let me explain. Akil Hussain is 100% playing. But in Zimbabwe, you're going to need a minimum of 2 spinners. Who's most likely to be the second spinner? It's going to have to be Roston Chase. Akil is the left arm off spin. Roston Chase is the right arm. Sorry, Akil is the left arm spinner, and Roston Chase will be the right arm off spinner, right? Those two are the guaranteed starters, and then they have a decision to make about will they also pick the leg spinner or the leg break bowling of Yannick Correa, and that would be your third spinner. So all Charles's pick has done is guaranteed that Roston is the second spinner. I know some of you are going to come in the comments below, you're going to cuss, you're going to say, nah, that don't make no sense, but it is what it is. That's what the pick will do. I don't know where in the batting order Roston will bat, but he is guaranteed a play now. And it takes me full circle back to the point about Kevin Sinclair. Those of you who have wanted who would have wanted Kevin Sinclair to replace Gudakesh Motie, go back to the original point I made. Do you think, not what you want, do you think selectors would then have made Kevin Sinclair leapfrog Roston Chase straight into the World Cup first 11? Because an off spinner would need to play. And the answer is no. The answer is no, because they're going to go for the international experience that Roston Chase brings. However faulty that logic is, that's what they're going to go for. So the person who has benefited the most from Johnson Charles's pick will be Roston Chase. He's guaranteed to play alongside Akil Hussain. And then it just depends on if they want the kind of, I hope you understand why I use this word here, the mystery element of Yannick Correa's leg spin. I'm not saying he's a mystery spinner, but just the mystery element of not knowing how good he will bowl. And that will be the decision they'll have to make about if he also gets a play as well. But if you're asking me what I would have done, me personally, I wouldn't have picked Johnson Charles. I also wouldn't have picked Kevin Sinclair. Knowing that an injury had happened and therefore I needed a replacement for the 15-man squad, I would have picked the one suit that the squad does not already have. So I wouldn't have picked Kevin Sinclair because I've already got Roston Chase there, rightly or wrongly. I wouldn't have picked Johnson Charles because I've already got King and Mayers and I know Hope can open if needs be. Who would I have picked? Dominic Drakes. Why would I have picked him? Because there is no left-arm seamer in the West Indies World Cup squad. Therefore, Dominic Drakes was the only possible pick that would bring something alternative to the World Cup squad that I could potentially utilize and not just have him as a bench rider, but potentially utilize given the opposition I'm playing at any moment in time and studying the matchups and thinking, actually, we could do with a left arm seamer for this particular opponent. And because they've got a plethora of right-handed batters, I'm just saying some stuff now, a plethora of right-handed batters, and we can get Dominic Drakes to utilize his left arm angle to maybe swing it back in. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that, to me, that was the choice staring them in the face. And I'd love to know if that ever crossed their mind. Listen, people, I told you for once when I said it was a quick one, I literally meant it was a quick one. It's still even gone to 20 minutes, but I've given you a lot to think about there. So Gudakesh Motie is out. Johnson Charles is in. Do you agree? And if you don't agree, what would you have done and why? Get at me in the comments below, at us at Carib Cricket on Twitter and Instagram. Find us on Facebook. Just type in Caribbean Cricket Podcast and I'll add you to the group. If you want to join our Discord chat, let me know in the comments below and I'll send you the link. And finally, of course, if you want to support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, remember we ain't sponsored out here. Head to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. Every little bit counts. I've been Machel St. Patrick here at one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Chew that one up. Let it breathe. Let it marinate. Then comment below. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.